Hello again. So this is me trying to be trendy in the wake of Bachmann releasing their Bulk Grain Wagon again. I thought they might get it right this time, but no, they've reverted to the old model, which is really wrong. So I had a few spare or loose Lima ones knocking about, so I thought I might upgrade them and see what I can do. So we'll get this one started by stripping this Lima one down. I'm going to have to admit that continuity again is going to be a little off on this one because I've got two. There's a yellow and blue one and just a plain blue one. So it will just flip between the two. So I'll take those old Lima chunky wheels out and then strip the body off. And although the Lima model is really old now, it's less wrong than what the Bachmann one is. But it still needs modification to make it more right. So the Lima one is, the body is nearly right, but for the version that they've done with the pedestal suspension, it should not have the boards, the advertising boards, because they were removed in the early 70s when the pedestal suspension was put on. That makes the Bachmann one correct because it's got the advertising boards and the leaf spring suspension, but it's wrong because it's TT scale or 3mm, which makes it quite wrong for 00 scale. So what I'm going to do is try and make the Bachmann, so what I'm going to try and do is make the Lima one look more representable. It's not going to be a super detailed, accurate model because that would take a lot of work for something that's not really worth it, but it will make it more pleasing. So I'm going to drill the axle boxes out because this one looks as if it's been run into the ground really. It's melted all the axle boxes. So we're going to drill it out and put some brass bearings in just to get it to run a bit smoother. Once we've got those drilled through, we can get the brass cups in and then place the wheels in and then carefully super glue them in. And after we've super glued them in, we can just put a bit of filler on the outside and mould and sculpt it to represent the axle boxes. Again, the Lima model isn't correct to proper modern day standards. The suspension unit is about 1.5 millimeters too deep, which makes the model sit about 1 millimeter too high. And like I say, it's a lot of work to get it right to make it look anywhere near, but it's a lot better than what the Bachmann model is. Now that we've got it to run right, we'll chop off the mounting block for the huge Lima coupling and we'll get some NME pockets installed so that we can get some slightly smaller couplings on. Then I'll put it on a test piece of track just to see how the ride height is, and then you can see just about here where it's riding just a little bit high compared to that Bachmann wagon. The buffers are just a little bit too high, but I can live with that. So we'll do some bodywork, get these advertising hoarding boards off, and then we'll put a new side on with a new rib. So there were 3 batches of these wagons built. The first ones, the 75XX series, which had 8 ribs down the side, and then the 76XX series and the 77XX series, which this one is modelled on, based on, which has the 5 ribs on the side, which makes the Bachmann grain flow wagon product code 33132 even more wrong, because none of that batch with the 8 ribs were upgraded to air brakes, it was only the later 77XX series that were grain flow air braked hoppers. That filler looks awful on this camera, but once it's filed down, it blends in. So we'll put that rib back on, and then file it all flat again, and then it will soon be time for paint. Yeah, that's not too bad. A little bit more cleanup before we go to paint. We'll do the chassis first in the paint shop. We'll get them coloured black using Humbrol enamel, just plain flat black. And then we'll set them aside, and then we'll get some grey primer on these bodies, ready for some blue paint. This is, again, it's just normal Humbrol, I think it's 01 basic primer. Now this blue paint is marine blue. It's a water-based acrylic from Ammo MIG, and it looks just a tiny little bit bright, but with the weathering processes that we're going to do, that will tone it down and get it to near enough right. So once that's done, we'll put those aside to dry, get the wheels in the bases, and then do some detail painting. And then I'm going to have another little rant. Okay, so I've said before, I'm not a rivet counter, but one thing that does bug me is people painting silver bits on buffer ends. Not all buffers are hydraulic. It takes just a second to check up, and I've seen experienced modelers doing this on steam engines, coaches, and all sorts of variety of wagons. Well, that's the end of my rant. Anyway, back to this, getting it back together. It all clips back together nicely. A touch of glue just to hold it, and then we'll go on to transfers. After paint, I did an acrylic varnish to get ready for transfers from Railtec, and once they were on, I again then sealed those in with an acrylic based varnish ready for weathering. Once the transfers were sealed in, I then went in with the dry brush just to try and pick some detail out on the lower chassis. This looked really heavy, and it was, so I did it mostly for the camera, because the camera really can't pick this sort of thing out very well. I went over it again, and then we went into washes, and on this wagon I decided less is more. So I flooded the top and let it all drain down towards the sides, and then with a drier brush that's soaked in thinners, and just dragged it all just straight down, and that gives the effect of streaking, rain effects, and that sort of thing. I didn't want to do too heavy with this one. I just wanted to keep it fairly clean. And a light spray with brake dust, and they're ready to go back on the railway. On the rotisserie, just so we can have a better look at them, and then off into revenue earning service on the layout. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.